Hello, everyone. This is the first webinar of the series of Knowledge Organization and Digital Humanities. Be welcome to these webinars. Today is the first session, and we have with us Professor Ying-Hsang Liu.
Hello, Ying-Hsang Liu is an associate professor at the Department of Design and Communication, University of Southern Denmark. He holds a PhD in Information Science from Rutgers University in the USA, with MA in Linguistics and BA in Library Science from Taiwan. He worked at Charles Sturt University and the Australian National University in Australia before Denmark. His research program has focused on the design of interactive information technologies, with a particular emphasis on user perceptions and individual differences and the relationship between visual search and user search behavior. Highlights of the impact of his research on industry applications include the design of system evaluation protocols for the design of conversational assistants for pilots in a cockpit environment, user evaluation and re-indexing of an educational database, and development of user-adaptive computational models through eye gaze data for information visualization interfaces. He has published more than 45 peer-reviewed journal articles and conference papers. He has served on the editorial boards of Online Information Review and Information Processing and Management, the iSchools organization's Digital Humanities Curriculum Committee, and chaired several ACIS committees. Welcome, Ying-Hsang.
Thank you, Cora. And hello, everyone. My name is Ying-Hsang Liu. Today, I'll be sharing with you the relationship between knowledge organization and digital humanities. The title of my presentation today is Are Control Vocabularies Still Useful for Information Retrieval and Digital Humanities? Before we talk about the usefulness of the control vocabularies, I'm giving you an overview about the development of the digital humanities and its relationship with the knowledge organization in general. From the analysis of the digital humanities course descriptions by the iSchool Digital Humanities Curriculum Committee, we have identified the main topics in the area of digital humanities. As we can see here, there are two clusters of topics, or what we call the research areas from our analysis. So on the left is the humanities side of the topics, including the public communication, production, critical history of cultural heritage issues, and so on. On the right is about the development of the systems, statistical data analysis, and the data analysis and modeling of the text and geospatial data and so on. And there are two emerging research areas. One is the interactive data visualization, and the other is management of language resources. So the question is, where is knowledge organization within the digital humanities field? So as we can see here, knowledge organization is still relevant in digital humanities research and also for information retrieval, particularly in the areas of web applications and architecture and metadata, the design and evaluation of human-computer interfaces, the management of language resources, and interactive data visualization. I hope that by the end of this presentation, then I will be able to convince you that the control vocabularies are still useful for information retrieval and digital humanities research. So by the end of this presentation, I hope that you'll be convinced that the usefulness of the control vocabularies for information retrieval and also for digital humanities research in general. So to give you some background information about the usefulness of the control vocabularies, Recently, we have seen studies within the field of data search. So here are the survey results from current data service practices. As we can see here, the metadata elements indexed, the search results ranking models, and the system evaluation methods, they are still key components within the data search practices. On the other hand, many data service providers indicate that they don't have the knowledge and resources to implement these areas well. So the metadata elements, we need the quality metadata. For the search results ranking models, we need to know which ranking model would be most useful for the users of this particular data service. Data service. And for the system evaluation methods, we probably don't have the knowledge and the skills and the resources to evaluate the search results properly. So when we are talking about the usefulness of control vocabularies, we need to have a clear definition about the control vocabularies. The control vocabularies are designed to address the issues of synonyms and homonyms by using a standardized vocabulary. It's been practiced extensively in the field of knowledge organization in library information science. And the issue of the effectiveness of control vocabularies, they have been very controversial over the years. And one of the key review papers by Usefulness indicates that there are all kinds of variables that would affect the usefulness of the control vocabularies, including the intrinsic and extrinsic variables and the costs. For example, for the intrinsic variables, the nature of the control vocabularies and the subject discipline, they all affect how the usefulness of the control vocabularies. And for the external variables, for example, the information retrieval system itself, the skills of the indexers and the searchers, and the user requirements, they all affect the effectiveness of the control vocabularies. In my presentation today, we will focus on the extrinsic variables when we are talking about the usefulness of control vocabularies. So to evaluate the control vocabularies is a very complex issue. There are all kinds of factors that we need to consider when we are evaluating the control vocabularies. Of course, one of the key points is the evaluation objectives. And we also need to develop the evaluation protocols, data collection, data analysis, and how we interpret the findings and so on against the evaluation objectives. And this is a very exciting research area within information retrieval. And in the context of the control vocabularies, Golub and her colleagues has proposed an evaluation framework for evaluating automatic indexing. And one of the key points in the paper is that we need to evaluate the usefulness of the control vocabularies in a more realistic environment. And for example, we need to recruit the real users with the real information needs when we are evaluating the usefulness of the control vocabularies and so on. And we also need to think about the evaluation metrics. So do we only focus on the precision and the recall measures, or other kinds of measures when we are concerned about the usefulness of the control vocabularies. And here I just provide some studies about the usefulness of the control vocabularies. As you can see here, we still have unanswered research questions in this area. For example, from the system-oriented information retrieval perspective, the Sultan study indicated that we can achieve equivalent search effectiveness between automatic and controlled indexing. And in another evaluation study, the results reveal that the control vocabularies are essential for exhaustive search. And there's another study showing that if we don't have the control vocabularies such as subject headings, about 1/4 of the records would be lost in our search results. So again, it's still controversial and still relevant to our discussion about the usefulness of control vocabularies and also about the how to improve our data services. So in the following presentation, I will talk about several user studies I have conducted over the years relevant to the usefulness of control vocabularies. And I'm trying to show you that there are different ways of evaluating the usefulness of control vocabularies. They all have their own advantages and disadvantages and their limitations. And when we are interpreting the results, we need to have a more holistic perspective. So, for example, this is a study about RDA and the new cataloging rules, the resource description and access, their core and non-core elements in this scheme. And the core and non-core elements are based on the expert opinions. And from a user survey study, we found that there's a discrepancy between the expert opinions and the user ratings. So as you can see here, the median user rating, whether they are very useful, moderately useful, or slightly useful, and whether those elements are rated as core or non-core. So again, as you can see here, the expert opinions may not agree with the users' ratings. And in this particular project, we also had a think aloud study. We recruited users doing searches using a library catalog. One of the key findings is that the most used elements are not all core elements in RDA. So again, we can see the discrepancy between the two. So here we can see that it's a complex issue. And to make the control vocabularies more useful, then we need to consider the user search behavior and how these vocabularies help their searches in real settings. And here's another study about the usefulness of the mesh terms by different types of searchers. And in this particular study, we were interested in whether the mesh terms, the medical subject headings, one kind of control vocabularies, how useful they are for different types of searchers. So in this experimental study, we developed two versions of a system. The only difference is whether the mesh terms have been added within the system and whether they can be searched by the users. In this particular system, we set it up using the TF-IDF as a search results ranking model. And the retrieval system is based on the Greenstone digital library software. And one of the key findings from this study is that we found that people's levels of domain knowledge significantly affect their search performance. And people's search experiences with the mesh terms, they are also correlated with their performance. As we can see here, the domain experts, when they are using a system with the mesh terms, they achieve the best results compared with other types of searches. And for the consideration of the user experiment, again, for this kind of studies, we need to consider all kinds of factors affecting the use of the control vocabularies and the user performance. And we need to, for example, consider the number of participants in our study. We need to consider the variability of the search topics, the individual differences of the searchers, the order of the presentation of the topics in the experiment, and of course, the evaluation metrics. And in another study about the re-indexing of an educational database, we developed a schema for this particular collection of the reports from the Office for Learning and Teaching Resource Library in Australia. And so for this particular project, we in one stage of the projects, we developed a schema for this collection of the reports, and then we did re-indexing by professional indexer, and then we did an evaluation study about the usefulness of the control vocabularies in searching activities. And for this particular system, it's just a regular content management system. So here are the main findings. So we found that the effectiveness of the metadata after the re-indexing. So as measured by the precision of the initial and last queries in our experiment. In this particular experiment, we recruited 2 professional indexers. And so as you can see here, we clearly demonstrated that the control vocabularies are useful for the indexers when they use the vocabularies effectively or appropriately. And we also found that the metadata also significantly increased the precision of the search results. So in summary, we can see that the mesh terms are most useful for domain experts as measured by the precision measure. And the metadata elements in the resource library, they are useful for professional indexers by both precision and recall measures. And in another study, we are trying to provide a more realistic experiment for the user study. So in this particular study, we recruited the users with their real information needs We used the repeated matrix design in the study. And one of the key findings was that people's familiarity with such topics will affect their search behavior. And another key point is that because of the research design, they could affect the results very significantly. So as you can see here, the usefulness of the mesh term suggestion interface perceived by the users, how they have been affected by the interface, the order of presentation of the two different interfaces, and the interaction between the two. So from this particular study, we also found that it's important to consider the people's familiarity with the search topics and how they can affect the perceived usefulness of the interface. And we also found that there's a discrepancy between the user preferences and the search performance. So it means that the interfaces or the features that are preferred by the users, they may not lead to better search performance in this study. And finally, I just want to show you an eye-tracking study about the different kinds of search interfaces for the mesh terms. So as you can see here, in this study, we have 4 types of search interfaces. The first one is similar to Google, as you can see here. And then another type of search interface is we display the suggested keywords below the search box. And we also created another 2 types of search interfaces distinguished by how the suggested keywords are generated and displayed. If you are familiar with the online database, online search databases, they may look familiar to you. So one of the key findings from this eye-tracking study was that the people's perceived search difficulty and the types of search interfaces will affect their eye gaze behavior. And the mesh terms receive more attention when they are displayed alongside each document for the experienced searchers. So here, for these 2 types of search interfaces, they will, people will pay more attention to these suggested terms by experienced searchers. And another interesting finding was that there's a significant interactional effects between cognitive style and their interactions with the search interfaces. And the cognitive styles are people's tendency to process information. There are 2 main types. One is holistic. Holistic people tend to pay attention to the overview before the details. The other type is analytic users. They tend to pay attention to the details before the overview. And so in this eye-tracking study, we analyzed the data and created a heat map to see where people, the elements of the search interface that people pay attention to when they are interacting with the system. As I mentioned, that for the findings of the relationship between cognitive styles and visual search behavior, we can see that there are significant differences between holistic and analytic users when they are interacting with different kinds of search interfaces. So here's a demo of the eye gaze pattern by people with different cognitive styles. Okay, so as you can see here, for the design of search interfaces, one size doesn't fit all. So people have different preferences when they are interacting with the search interfaces. And the next question would be, which types of search interfaces would contribute to better search performance by the users. So in summary, where is a knowledge organization, KO, within the digital humanities for information retrieval? I think that the KO and control vocabularies are still relevant for information retrieval and digital humanities research in general, particularly in the areas of web applications, architecture, and metadata. There's still our strong, we still have the, we have a strong, we are strong in this particular area. Particularly in the development of metadata and how they can be structured for different kinds of applications. And in the area of design and evaluation of human-computer interfaces, as this belongs to the area of human-computer interaction. As we have discussed with several studies, we have drawn on the concepts from human-computer interaction in our studies. And also the management of the language resources. They are concerned about, it's concerned about the data infrastructure in our recent discussions in this area. So we need to have high quality metadata. We need to have a good metadata scheme for organizing the various language resources as part of the data infrastructure. And finally, the area of interactive data visualization, drawing from the human-centered computing and interactive information retrieval studies. We are trying to develop user-adapted interfaces and trying to develop information visualization systems that can adapt to people's attributes, individual differences, and so on. And I think that these are the areas that how KO can fit within the digital humanities studies as well as information retrieval. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It was an amazing presentation. It gave us exactly the real connection between knowledge organization and digital humanities. Sometimes many people don't see this connection and how it works. So once again, many thanks for this presentation. I would like to ask you a small question. What, in your opinion, is still missing for the success or a higher success of controlled vocabularies? Is it just a matter of users knowing how to use them, knowing how the system works? What's your opinion about this?
Very good point. It's relevant to our current discussions about the transparency of the what people call different kinds of AI systems, AI-based systems. So for example, for the search engines, what was the transparency of the search results presented to the users? The search engine companies know a lot about the users, and they try to make use of that kind of information to personalize the search results. So in this sense that the user has little or no control about the search results, how they have been presented, and the relevancy of the search results to the user information needs at that particular time. And I think that on the other hand, when we are designing the search interfaces, we are also concerned about whether the users will have more control about the search results. So there's a trade-off between the two. Whether you would like to make the system much more transparent to the users or not. In our current practices by search engine companies, they are not transparent at all. You don't know exactly how they have been, how the search results have been presented to you, and in what ways you can control your results. On the other hand, for the usefulness of the control vocabularies from our empirical studies, we can see that different kinds of users have different preferences, and they also have different levels of skills and knowledge to use the control vocabularies. And when they use those control vocabularies, whether they will contribute to the final results, I mean, better search results, is still an open-ended research question. So thank you for your great question. I think that it's also relevant to our current discussions about the transparency of any kind of AI-based systems in our everyday lives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ying-Hsang. I really join Olivia in saying this was such a wonderful first talk in the seminar series that shed light on so many different aspects that take interplay when creating successful information retrieval systems for our users. And you have worked in so many connected fields or disciplines. You've mentioned HCI and systems design, but also information retrieval and knowledge organization. So I was wondering whether you have some thoughts on how much do these fields collaborate with each other, because it seems that all of them are very important in providing very good services, but do they complement each other as they should, or what have you noticed in your research?
Very good question, Cora. Thank you. I think that over the years, I think that we are still working on different subfields, and we don't talk to each other, and we don't collaborate. We don't do collaborative research in this area as much as we would like to. And of course, there are all kinds of barriers for this research collaboration. And from reflecting on my personal experiences, I think that even within a subfield, we still have the divisions. For example, the system-oriented and the user-oriented approaches to the evaluation of information retrieval systems. We do the evaluations very differently. As I presented in my talk, perhaps I should have highlighted the different approaches a little bit better. Some of the evaluation studies, they don't involve the real users, particularly in the system-oriented evaluation. No human users are involved in the evaluation practice. And in one of my studies, we use the professional indexers, okay? Partly because we would like to demonstrate the value of the the re-indexing of the metadata more clearly. So we decided to recruit the professional indexers. And as I mentioned earlier, the individual differences or any other kinds of user characteristics, they also affect the search results very significantly. So again, from my experiences, even within the area of information retrieval, we don't agree with each other about the different approaches in the evaluation. And for the KO, the knowledge organization community, when I presented our results to the community, then people always say that, yeah, we know, yeah, the control vocabularies are useful. It's what we have been doing for years. There's no need for another study. And for people who are focusing on the search interfaces or the interface design in the area of human-computer interaction, they haven't heard of anything about control vocabularies. And for the human-centered computing research community I've been working with recently, they are more interested in other kinds of signals that could predict people's search success, such as eye gaze behavior, their search behavior, how much time you spend on looking at certain components of the interface and so on. So I think that it's still, we still have a long way to go, but it's also encouraging that we can see the connections among the different fields with the umbrella term or umbrella field of digital humanities in recent years. Thank you.
Thank you, Ying-Hsang, very much for this reflection. And we hope that perhaps inspired by you and other interdisciplinary work within digital humanities, that these fields can come together and collaborate in true academic spirit. Well, with this, I would like to thank you once again and invite all to join us in the next seminar. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.